So just two of us this week.
Just the two of us.
This is The Cross Section with Nate Lull and David Edelstein.
Yes, there are three Mets things in my screen at once right now. The two pennants and my jersey, because I'm feeling back in the baseball spirit this week with all of what's gone on, baseball related.
I was supposed to go to Citi Field this summer. I haven't been, but now obviously that won't be happening. So I'm bummed about it.
You've never been to Citi Field before?
I've been to the new Yankee Stadium. I went down last summer, but I had not been to Citi Field before. So that was on my list to do this summer, and now, fortunately, that won't happen.
As a Mets fan, you haven't been to Citi Field, but you went to the new Yankee Stadium first?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
I actually got asked to go with like a school trip that they went down, and they needed an extra chaperone, and I got to go. So that was fun. But no, I have been slacking off as a Mets fan and have not gotten to Citi Field.
Okay. See,
I never went to Shea either, so I really.
You never went to Shea Stadium either? You've never seen a Mets home game in your life?
No.
Oh my gosh, this is actually mind blowing for me because I originally am from New Jersey, right outside the city, and it's not like I went in all the time, but I mean, growing up, from a young age, occasionally we would go to like one game a year, maybe.
Sure.
The Brooklyn Cyclones, the Mets single A short season team. So I saw Pete Alonso and met him when he was on the Cyclones in his first year, that kind of stuff. But I worked in Manhattan this one summer in 2016, and because I was there and they had like student tickets for whatever price was like $10 or something, I would go on like Fridays because I'd get out of work early and I'd just go there and I'd meet my dad. And we'd go to games frequently. So that's kind of crazy to think about. Just not that it's like I was there all the time, but that as a Mets fan, I don't know, maybe I live kind of close. So I guess every once in a while I was there. We got to get you out there.
I know, it's funny because I've probably been to Fenway probably 10 times. I was out in Minnesota and I went to a Twins game. Like I've been to a bunch of other stadiums. I just never, for whatever reason, never worked out that I went to a Mets game. So, again, I've been slacking.
Have any of the games you have seen live been Mets games?
No, I have not seen a Mets game in person. Yeah.
All right,
a bunch of Blue Jays games, probably been to the Sky Dome or Rogers Center, whatever they want to call it these days. Probably been there 5-6 times. So, yeah, no, never seen a Mets game.
I went to the Rogers Center last year because I went up to Toronto. Figured I was in Central New York and might as well get up there. I've passed by Fenway, haven't been inside it. But that's crazy, man. What about a Syracuse Mets game? Past 2 years, they've been there.
I have not been. I've been, but they were the Syracuse
Spring
Chiefs.
training. What about spring training for the Mets?
Oh, no.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to have to get you a media credential to like a game this year if they do.
Yeah. Because when I did Syracuse stuff, they were the Chiefs. So
that's true. Yeah, until they became the Mets last year, and this would have been their second year, I guess. This one, So they've only had one season. But I did go to a Syracuse Mets game too. But that's wow. Okay, I'm sure there are many people who haven't been, but again, not that I've been there so much, but just being from right outside the city, it's a thing. You go every once in a while, especially as a baseball fan. You go on trips or group things, like you said.
Sure.
So, well, Major League Baseball is coming back apparently soon. They've agreed, apparently, according to the MLBPA, resolved all remaining issues, which will be a fun tweet to look back on the next time something happens for collective bargaining in about a year, things like that. But MLBPA denied another request for 60 games and extended playoffs. Then the owners denied their counteroffer and just used their ability to say, okay, we're going to have a 60-game season, and can you report by July 1st? So they had 6 days to get there. But it looks like baseball is coming back.
Yeah, it is exciting. I'm interested to see if they are able to pull it off. I just wonder you keep hearing all these things about, is there going to be, are there more spikes coming back, and what will happen? So I often wonder, like, will they report? Will something actually get moving once they get there? I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, it just seems like there's so many what ifs still, even if something is approved.
Yeah, I've been seeing some players on Instagram already that they're there. And of course, all of the teams are going to be having their spring training 2.0 at their home stadiums, which is going to be interesting for teams like Toronto in Canada, where the border's closed.
Right.
And or do the players go to Toronto? Or is Toronto supposed to play in Florida like they were thinking? But Florida is also now currently an issue with all the cases of COVID-19 they've been having. So with the NBA and with some of the major league teams like Miami now closing their beaches and reverting back to shutting down mode, it'll be interesting to see how Tampa Bay and Miami handle being at home, or where they go. Arizona too, Texas's teams. So it is interesting. We see the English Premier League playing right now, and different country, different part of the world, but they've seemingly managed to get back to some sort of playing with their testing and isolating and whatnot. It's going to be interesting to see how, with this every other day testing, they're going to do. So every other day they're going to be tested for COVID-19. Once a month they're going to get antibody tests. If they, players that are not participating, they'll sit in the stands and 6 feet apart from each other. So, and the schedule is going to be 20 games against all of your, 40 games rather, against all of your current league and division rivals. So like National League East for the Mets will be 40 games against those other teams, and then 20 games against the American League East, the corresponding league division. So they're not really traveling too far. Most of the teams are closer for a lot of them, but it's just interesting to me how they're going to manage it. There's so much testing, which is good, but you wonder what's going to happen if someone does test positive. Does that player have to sit out? They have to sit out until they test negative twice, which every other day means at least 3 days you have to wait to find out. How is that going to affect the teams? And maybe even, I'm thinking too, the integrity of the game if your players are going to be on this COVID-19 injured list and maybe they're out for 2 weeks, or your whole team suddenly has to stop playing.
Yeah, exactly. And I should have read up a little bit more on it, but I was reading some stories on golf this week, and I think one of the players' caddies maybe had come back and they had tested positive for COVID-19, and that kind of threw a wrench into things. And I want to go back and read some more on that just to see how they handle it. Now, obviously, being a more individual sport, there's some more leeway there. But yeah, what if your team gets hit and there's a couple of guys that are out, and then all of a sudden that short season gets away from you? It'd be interesting to see how, do some teams stay healthy and some teams don't? If one team gets really sick, do they shut the whole thing back down again? And if there are a couple of games, very, very interested to see how all this gets handled.
That's definitely the risk. And one thing we had already spoken about when we spoke about the AHL canceling its season was, why can professional major league sports come back while the minor league ones can't? And it came down to the economics and the TV dollars, which they'll still be able to get as Major League Baseball. So a 60-game season is better than none. And they have the TV broadcast money and advertising money to sponsor that. So that's one reason why the big push is coming back. Besides the argument that a lot of people are making of baseball is America's sport, in a time like this, let's have baseball to bring us back together, which is completely valid. But also there's still the health risks involved, and the baseball money from TV dollars is probably pushing it. So then they're going to take all these precautions. The players, as long as they agree to play by them and everyone agrees, okay, as long as they're following guidelines that the state and country are putting in line. But one thing that I was reading online, along with all just the basic rules, is the integrity of the season. And yes, it will be great as a baseball fan, I'm wearing my jersey again, to have games back, to have the playoffs. But the two things are, what if your team goes down? Then you can't compete anymore. It's not like a injury where you get hit by a pitch and like your shoulders hurt, or you're running and you pull a hamstring and you're out. It was described to me by someone that this is a kind of injury, COVID-19, that is affecting the entire world right now. And this is something that the real key point was that this is something that spreads to other people. You can infect other people with COVID-19. If you get hit by a pitch, your bruise is not going to affect someone else. Your hamstring getting pulled is not going to affect your whole team and the opponent's team and anyone else that you've been near. So it's a very different kind of injury, quote unquote, that can affect the season. The other part of the integrity of the season is it's already 60 games. People talk about the asterisk. Oh, we should put an asterisk next to the Houston Astros World Series wins. Maybe. That's a different conversation about cheating in baseball. This is a different conversation where you're down to 60 games, and it's more of a sprint to the playoffs. And then they didn't do the expanded playoffs. They're doing the same playoff structure they have. So you still need to be a division winner or the top two wildcard teams in your league that are not division winners. So people were saying an expanded playoff with more teams playing against each other in a tournament fashion might lead to a more accurate league champion than the smaller setting. But you agree to some rules, it's going to, and those will be the rules. Do you put an asterisk on the season at the end of the year saying, oh, the Mets won the World Series, but it was, remember, the coronavirus season with 60 games and, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I always think back to like the World War II years, where a lot of athletes weren't playing, serving, something like that. And I don't know how that is viewed by like baseball purists and traditionalists for those years. So like, will these COVID-19 games be viewed the same way? Will we forget about it eventually? I really don't know. I guess it all depends on if we actually get through the whole season before there's another spike, or if there's another spike. Fingers crossed that everything goes well, because I also agree with the other point that this is something that could lift everyone's spirits. And I can't tell you how many people have said, I just would love to go home from work and watch a game. You know, I don't care if there's no fans there and there's no noise. Like, I had forgotten how many people just love to come home in our upstate area and watch a Yankee game or watch a Mets game at night. And that's like part of their routine. So very interested to see what happens going forward. But yeah, I don't know how history is gonna view this. That I guess remains to be seen.
How do you think that the fans will kind of just interpret the season? Not only the coming home and just watching the game and relaxing, because that's something that people do. It's just relaxing to come home, see a game, root for your team. But we haven't had that ability to root for a team and to be brought together in that kind of way. And at the moment, besides the English Premier League across seas, there's none of the American sports have been brought back yet. So with the July 1st quick comeback return to spring training, and then the July 23rd or July 24th start, that's 2 or 3 weeks later, 24, 25 days, then that's a pretty quick start that we're looking at here. Within the literally less than a month, we could be seeing opening day. How do you think fans will just kind of respond to finally, potentially, it's not even certain yet, but potentially having a game back to watch in any kind of fashion?
I would think, this is the vibe that I get just talking to people, that they're going to be, if it happens, they'll be happy to have anything. And maybe some of the old way of thinking, at least for now, will go out the window, and they'll just say, you know what, I'm thankful that we have this, and it's just great to have it no matter what happens this year, no matter who wins. It almost doesn't matter. It's just that return to normal, the return to that routine, the return to having a little bit of an escape from your day to go and watch sports. So I think people, you know, like sometimes you're flipping through the channels and you go, I don't really want to watch that game today. It's two teams I don't care about. Now I could just see people stopping and being like, oh, yeah, I'll watch that. I don't care. It's whoever. I'll go watch it because it's on. You know, where it's like you feel lucky to have it back, hopefully.
I wonder whether baseball will gain a higher appreciation, because there are two kind of polar opposite things happening right now too on the seesaw here. One side is we remember the last time baseball didn't really play. Well, I don't really remember it, but I've heard about it in 1994 when there was a baseball strike and, they didn't have the World Series. They cut the season off. And this fan base suffered from that. Baseball took steps in the following years to, tighten the ball a little bit, have some more excitement, try and get people back into it, more runs scored. Maybe people will come back to baseball. But they lost, Major League Baseball lost a ton of fans because the season was cut off and things went so sourly. Now we're dealing with that situation with the negotiations for the season. We finally have an agreement, but now we have a 60-game schedule. Yeah, people will probably be wanting something back. But, the NHL, too, has lost whole seasons before. And, you see how they're still fans. And so I wonder whether baseball will lose some fan bases because of how this is played out. Or I wonder whether it will gain more as one of the only sports coming back with the sudden quick return, if it does, just like the Major Arena Soccer League tried to do with being the only sport. Even if people say baseball's slow and baseball is a thinking game and baseball is, it's not enough action, even though that's a whole other conversation. But people say that's their arguments. But now if that's the only thing, maybe they'll actually gain an appreciation for it and baseball will gain sports. So I'm not sure which way that will kind of play out here.
I also did hear a lot of people saying, come on, they're arguing over the money issue and don't, the classic, don't these guys make enough money? I'll go and I'll play for $1 million if they don't want it, and you hear all those arguments, and I totally get both sides of that. I really do. But you wonder, will that turn some people off? My gut tells me that people just want to watch something. So if it's on, they're going to be excited. But I have talked to some people that are completely turned off and disgusted by the fact that these guys could come back and play and kind of give the country a shot in the arm in terms of positive energy and giving people something to watch. And they're just it's all about money with these guys. It's all about the bottom line. And it seems like they could just suck it up and find a way to play. I'm kind of in the middle on that argument, but it's just something else I've heard along the way.
Yeah, I don't think I've taken a side on that, but I do recognize the arguments too, that along with what you just said, some people's response has been, well, there are players that make the major league minimum. They're not making the crazy millions of dollars. Right. And the rules they were talking about were going to be prorated for games or percentage wise. And if you start taking percentages out of this is still going to be a lot of money, but the $500,000, right? The $500,000, which again, I'll gladly take that. Thanks.
Sure.
But the $500,000 person a year player, that is a significant life impact based on their finances compared to the millions of dollars was, which maybe, I don't know what any of their personal expenses are. It could still have an impact. You think, maybe they're spending more because they have more. I don't know. But what one of the arguments was if they're going to discuss the rules in the form of prorate and percentage, the person who makes less because they're a rookie and it's their first contract and it's lower in the lower 500,000s, which is, near the major league minimum, that person does get affected much more greatly. And they do have more of a concern than some of these millions of dollars people. So you got to look at the whole spectrum of where players are too, even though it is still a lot of money. But you mentioned history, which is really important to say at this time too, because where is the one place that keeps Major League Baseball history? The Baseball Hall of Fame in, I don't know, Cooperstown, New York. Is that nearby? Yeah. And I think I've been there before. The Hall of Fame reopened on Friday morning at 9 a.m. for visitors. And there are visitors back who are getting to visit. And I've spoken with some of the staff there about how we're living through a moment that might have its own exhibit in the Hall of Fame at some point. The baseball coming back, the shortened season, the coronavirus impact. You see things like World War II, like you mentioned, and how that affected the game. Or you see things like how in 9/11, how the Mets and Mike Piazza's home run played such a huge role in bringing the city back together. And that is a huge moment that's still regarded. And he's in the Hall of Fame and everything. So you wonder what could still happen, this story that's still being written about the coronavirus, how that could be, that is associated with baseball and the Hall of Fame and things like that. But it's open now. And they have a lot of safety precautions in line, but people have been able to come back as of Friday.
I was not surprised to see you were one of the first people in line there. So tell
I
us about
so
that experience.
Yeah, so I wasn't the first visitor as far as like going back on Friday morning. Someone else has that fun thing that they could tell people that they were the first one back inside the building like that. But it turns out the Baseball Hall of Fame staff tell me that on Thursday when I went back the day before, they weren't open yet, that I was the first visitor at all back at the Hall of Fame since it closed in mid-March. I think it was the 15th or 16th they had closed in March. And so I go back on Thursday to see I asked for permission to see the different precautions they put in place so I could show people what they could expect when they go back, such as everyone's going to get a stylus. I actually have one. I could grab it in a moment, but it's a rubber tip stylus that you could touch the screen and touch things and elevator buttons if you want without using your hand. There are more than 25 hand sanitizing locations throughout the building. They put these on deck circles on the ground. They're these circles. They're not big, but they're baseball design. So it's an on deck circle, which is where you're supposed to stand to stay 6 feet away from other people. Everyone has to wear masks. They're going to have staff that's getting trained that will make sure that all these rules are being enforced. Put up the plexiglass in front of places where social distancing isn't necessarily physical distancing rather isn't necessarily possible. And so you could, like when you're dealing with money or tickets at the booths, one-way signs on the ground so that you know which way to go through the building. Also stay to the right on the stairs, which I thought people really did anyway. But I mean, definitely you should make sure people know to stay to one side. Sanitizing, all that kind of stuff. And so when I get there, I go inside, and long story short, they pull out this book called the Record Book, which is where they're logging their visitors. And I'm the first one there. So they take my name, my phone number, and who I'm with and all that, and they put me in the record book. So, and I think that I have a record that's kept in the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
There you go. So tell me, I read a little bit about it, but like if someone wants to go, they have to call and there's specific times, things like that along with your ticket?
So I believe you can still show up normally, but what's being highly recommended and what people should do, from what I'm told, is this biggest difference of all the guidelines I just mentioned, is that they're doing timed admission. So they're open from 9 to 5 every day, the Baseball Hall of Fame, and you can go online to baseballhall.org, and when you're going, the biggest thing that's important for people to know is in order to avoid those large lines that you see outside. I mean, I've been there when there are huge amount of it's not Hall of Fame weekend or anything. There are just huge lines of people wanting to visit.
Sure. And
that would not be very good for the physical distancing. The Hall of Fame can operate at 25% capacity as a museum. That's just still in the hundreds, I'm told, of what they're allowed. But in order to still even keep it lower than that, they've staggered the admission. So going to baseballhall.org, you can buy your tickets online in advance, and you choose the half-hour time slot where you will arrive. So therefore, by having people, I think it's 25 people per half hour they've allowed. By having 25 people per half hour staggering their admission, then they start to go through the museum. There's no time limit on how long you could stay there, but there won't be those large lines. And presumably, you'll start making your way through the museum, and you'll be half an hour ahead of the group behind you, so you won't be all there at the same time, and that large group won't always be together as you're moving around. So it helps spread people out in their admission and everything.
Did they say, like, in future phases that they'll be able to pump those numbers back up? I think you had said that they're at 25%. And as it goes, are they hoping to open up and be able to allow more people in?
So the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, as a museum right now, can be at 25% capacity, which I was told is still a few hundred people inside, which is imaginable. They said basically the general statement of they're going to continue to follow the guidelines from the state and other overseeing organizations. So as Governor Cuomo presumably allows more people inside, as we get to a point like that over time, there are no more phases. It's just phase 4 now.
Right.
So as more people are allowed inside percentage-wise, then I'm sure what they said was that they'll be allowed to let more people in. But for now, they're open for the first time in 3 months, and they're usually only closed 3 days out of the year. So it's been quite the difference story for them, they've said.
Yeah, I was in Cooperstown a couple of weeks ago, maybe like 2 weeks ago now, and everyone said how quiet it had been. They said they were still seeing some people that were coming from out of town just to see the village and walk around, but it was remarkable to be walking down Main Street in the middle of June and have it be so quiet. It felt like a February day and not a June day. So it's good to see that they'll be able to bring in some more people and some more dollars at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're a little bit closer than I am distance-wise, I believe. So, but that's exactly what I was thinking. I've been there when it's like 80,000 to 100,000 people on Hall of Fame weekend. I've been there when there's really no one around because it's a 9 a.m. in the morning and Larry Walker is having his Hall of Fame orientation tour, or back in February. And then I've gotten videos from people who walked Main Street and sent me some video content to use as B-roll to show there was no one on the street. I mean, it was empty, not a car, not a person. And it's not even like it was snowing. It was like okay weather. And then I show up for this on Thursday, and there are people around. It's more active. There are people in and out of businesses. They're open. There are people walking around. But overall, it's just quiet. And I mean, I was speaking to Cooperstown Mayor Tillapon, and I was like, here we are on Main Street. People are coming back. People will be allowed to come back. That's huge for the tourism and things like that. They have all their fields. I mean, Glimmerglass is closed for the year. All those different kinds of other museums, City Hall. They have an art museum right in there in the Village Hall. So it was funny. And also, I guess they'll appreciate this shout out. But while I'm interviewing the mayor, different high school student athletes that I was familiar with go jogging by, and I run into them. So the mayor goes, "Oh, you know them?" I'm like, "Yeah, they were on the team." She's like, "It's a small village," and I was like, "But it's just usually it's full of thousands of people."
Yeah.
And for all different reasons, including the Hall of Fame. And now it was just quiet. No one was around. It was a very different kind of experience to be in Cooperstown. But hopefully, it's opening back up and we're getting back to some sort of visitors, I guess, which is good.
Well, we talked about baseball, and the Hall of Fame and pro baseball starting back up. But we had some other news this week that about the NHL draft. Interesting to see who did or didn't get the number one pick. And one thing that I found interesting about it is maybe from a local perspective is that Comet fans still have a chance of maybe getting that number one pick for Vancouver. So we'll have to see how that happens down the road.
True. So yes. So first of all, what happened this year with the draft was the bottom 7 teams got that are not playing anymore in this season. They were ranked in their order of percentage-wise for chances of getting the draft lottery for the top 3 picks. And that's how, the NHL works. They draft whoever gets the first, second, and third pick, and they announce them in reverse order. But now there are 8 teams that they didn't know, because usually they were choosing the top 15 picks, but there are 8 teams they didn't know. So they listed them as placeholders, Team A through Team H. And if the top 3 picks were won by teams that were in the bottom 7 that we know who they are, like the New Jersey Devils, unfortunately, and the Buffalo Sabres. So you and I both are crying over here. But they did not get it. They stayed put where they were at 7 and 6 and 7. But 7 and 8 it wound up being in order because the number one pick goes to one of the placeholder teams, which had like a 3% chance of getting it. Meanwhile, like the Ottawa Senators had 2 picks that equaled like 18 to 20% or something. And the Detroit Red Wings, I think, might have been number 1 with 18% just alone. And they get the second and third picks. And of course, in a year where everything's so crazy, of course that would happen, right? So, yes. So the Vancouver Canucks are one of the teams remaining in this playoff push that the NHL return to play plan has, if they come back. The consequences, though, are that the placeholder teams, the 8 of them that got the order, which one of those 8 placeholder teams is the number 1 pick in this year's draft, are the 8 teams that will lose in the first qualifying round of the NHL return to play playoffs. So the Vancouver Canucks are going to play the Minnesota Wild if the season returns, everything's contingent upon the season returning. If the season returns, in order to get a shot at the next lottery that will help determine who gets that first overall pick, the Canucks have to lose to the Wild. So there's many balances in this episode here. The balance is, for Canucks fans, do they want their team to lose in the playoffs in order to get a shot at the first overall pick? For Comets fans, it's so important to mention off the top that if the Canucks get the top overall pick, we will I leave room for any possibility, almost absolutely never see the top overall pick of an NHL draft play in the AHL. And therefore, you'll never see that person play in Utica or for the Comets. So from Comets fans' perspective, I put out a poll the other day saying, from a Comets perspective, would you rather the Canucks lose and they get a shot at the first overall pick, or would you rather them win and move on? And it's an interesting thing because Canucks fans might answer of course they want their team to move on, but some of them might, for whatever reason, decide, and it seemed like actually 54 to 46%. It was leading. The 54% wanted the Canucks to lose and get a shot at the first overall pick. Again, it's a shot. It doesn't mean they get it by losing. They are just one of the 8 teams that might be in the lottery to get it. What is true, though, from the Comets' perspective, besides the fact that the first overall pick, if they get it, you're not going to see it. Based on a JT Miller trade from a few years ago that the Canucks made, the Canucks will lose a first-round pick if they beat the Wild. So if they beat the Wild, they lose a first-round pick. And they also won't be one of the top 15 picks, which were decided the other day. And that includes, they won't be the top overall pick, even though the Comets won't see them. So regardless of that, from a Comets perspective, you lose 2 first-round picks, or potentially at least 1, if by beating the Wild. If the Canucks lose, they keep that first-round pick from the JT Miller trade from a few years ago. They get another top 15 pick, which potentially could be number 8 or 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Maybe. That's a really high pick. Maybe that person will never be on the Comets either, but much more of a chance than the number 1 overall pick. But it could wind up being the number 1 pick. So basically, from a Comets perspective, you're gaming how many picks and who they'll be. And for sure, it's 1 first-round pick that they would keep if they lose, let alone maybe gain another one that is 9 through 15 that could play at some point for the Comets. Maybe not really. So from a Comets perspective, it's interesting to think about what will happen. But the Canucks organization is involved in this much more than we thought they would because of how unlikely it would be for a unnamed placeholder team to get one of the top 3 picks, and they get the top pick. So long explanation. Sorry for taking a few seconds there, but hopefully that made sense. Just of how it's really about from the Comets' perspective, the picks and whether you'll keep them or not. It seems that the Comets fans, based on my poll, want the Canucks to lose so that they keep that first-round pick and potentially get the 9 through 15 one, not the top 1. So that maybe they'll see 2 different picks this year come to Utica.
I haven't seen anything on, so if they don't play any games, how will they decide from there about the other placeholder teams? What will happen at that point?
I also haven't seen anything about that, but my guess would be that it would just be based on the same points percentage from when the season was cut off as the bottom 7 teams are chosen by. So every team is at a different place. Some of them play different amounts of games. That's something that's a little weird to me. Yes, it's a different year. So I don't think that just means, it's a different year, so we just let them end at different points. I think it's a different year. Then we do things a little differently, as we have seen. So maybe we revert back to the same number of games that every team had played to make sure they were all on an even playing field. Because what if a team had 3 days off, but another team played 2 games to end the season and they won both, which puts them ahead, which just changed things. It's a different year. I don't make the decisions, but definitely consideration should be given to all that. I would guess that those bottom 8 teams would be the ones that line up in the reverse percentage order, and then they would just assign those to what the teams A through H should have been, and then we'll know who the top pick should been. But again, I'm unsure if they even announced which team, A through H, received the top overall.
Right.
I think they said it was one of the placeholder teams, but I'll have to check.
But
So,
exactly what you said before. In a crazy year, how crazy it is that a team, the placeholder team, would have a 2 or 3% chance of getting the top pick, and they get it. I mean, that's just wild.
It's always possible, but of course, in a year where there's so much weird already, why not give the top overall pick to a placeholder team for the first time ever and still keep it in limbo that we have no idea who that's going to be?
Yep.
Because we don't even know who's going to come back, and we don't know who's going to lose when it does, if it does come back, and then we don't know who's going to win the lottery if it does come back and some teams lose. So let's have fun with it while we're at it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully we have some hockey in a couple of weeks, and we'll be talking about this again whenever they figure it out. So
I know coming up this week on the 30th, on Tuesday, we have the second meeting of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association COVID-19 Task Force. So that is something that we should all look out for. So please definitely keep checking in here with the cross section and Nate and I with all of that. But it looks like we're still moving in a direction that's back towards sports, slowly but surely. And we might actually see something this year. And like you said, I think it will be something that all of us, no matter who wins, no matter who plays, we'll just be excited to get back to the games.